Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 675 of People Behind the Science. Today, we are excited to rebroadcast our interview with our guest, Dr. Gemma Reguera, originally released on October 17th of 2016. Listeners, Gemma is an accomplished microbiologist who studies bacteria and other microbes that can clean up waste and pollution. Her research examines what these organisms do in their natural environment, which microbes can be cultivated in a laboratory setting, and how these microbes can be used to solve real-world problems. So listeners, get ready to hear from another exceptional researcher in this episode of People Behind the Science.
Every day, discoveries are made that will change our understanding of the world around us. Dr. Marie McNeely is here to bring you the brilliant minds who are making these discoveries so they can share their incredible stories and take you on an amazing journey. Welcome to People Behind the Science.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of People Behind the Science. Listener, today I am thrilled to introduce you to Dr. Gemma Reguera. So Gemma, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for the opportunity, Marie.
Absolutely. Well, we are excited to learn a little bit more about you and your research. But first, I want to introduce you to our listeners. So listeners, Gemma is an associate professor in microbiology and molecular genetics at Michigan State University. She completed her undergraduate studies in biology at the University of Oviedo in Spain and received her PhD in microbiology from the University of Massachusetts-Amherst. And then afterward, she conducted postdoctoral research at Harvard Medical School, as well as the University of Massachusetts-Amherst, before she joined the faculty at MSU, where she is today. And listeners, Gemma is here with us today to talk a little bit about her experiences in science and tell us about her journey. So, Gemma, today we cannot wait to get to know more about you, both as a scientist, but also just as a person. So, can you start by telling us what you like to do with your time when you're not busy doing science?
Most of the time I spend it thinking or doing science is almost like a lifestyle. But I do like to disconnect because it becomes very intense and I need physical exercise, go to the gym. I love Zumba. Being from Spain, I miss the Latin music, so that's a very nice way for me to disconnect. And I like to spend as much time with my family, dog walks, just having fun with my son. He's 11 years old and having quality time. I love to read. I love to cook. So I really maximize the little time I have to really do that.
I love it. Well, Gemma, it sounds like you have a lot of different things to keep you busy when you're not in the lab. And you mentioned a dog. I'm a dog lover myself, and I can see the adorable picture of your dog here on Skype. So can you tell us a little bit more about it?
About our dog? Sure. We love German Shepherds because they are such wonderful, loyal friends. And they have the loyalty and the intelligence that you wish most people would have. We had lost our beloved German Shepherd after 10 years. And this poor new dog, we saw it on Facebook that had been abandoned in one of the coldest weekends that we had here in Michigan 2 winters ago. It was like a wind chill of minus 20.
Oh, wow.
And he somehow survived, tied to a fence outdoors, and he was rescued. And we were the lucky people to be able to adopt him. And he's just awesome. We love him. His name is Ozzy.
Ozzy. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful to hear a little bit more about your life outside the lab. And I do want to talk about what keeps you busy in the lab as well. So Can you give us the high level view of how you describe what you do to someone who's not familiar with your field?
So I'm a microbiologist. We study small organisms, microbes, and most people really think about the ones that cause disease. But we actually focus on the ones that are the good guys out there. There are billions and billions of microbes that are really doing wonderful things, keeping the planet alive and well. They actually clean up all our messes, their waste, the pollution. So we are very interested in going to the environment, studying these organisms, what they do, and then really select those that we think we can bring to the lab and we can really harness their activities to solve real problems.
Excellent. Well, I know there are lots and lots of good guy microbes out there, so I really appreciate that you're spending your time learning more about them and standing up for these, because I know, like you said, when people hear microbes, they think about bad things, things that are going to make them sick. So
yeah, it's what is close to home. That's really the exposure we have to microbes. So it's a good reminder that we have these wonderful allies and they are ready to help us.
Absolutely. And with balancing things outside of science as well as the work in the lab, it can sometimes be a challenge. And for me, I'm always looking for little bits of motivation from everyone that I talk to. So, Gemma, do you have a favorite motivational quote or saying that you can share with us today that you like?
I actually have one, and it's by Albert Einstein. He said that you do not really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother.
I like it.
And that's something that every scientist should be reminded of, because we tend to focus so much on the details of our work that we forget how to really disseminate our research and make it down to earth, bring it back to the public, and really help motivate people and understand really the beauty of what we do and what is out there. But it's a challenge as well, but worth pursuing.
Certainly. So do you practice on your own family members, making sure that you can explain to them?
Well, my husband is a microbiologist, so I think...
That's cheating. Yeah, he knows.
I know. So it becomes very difficult. And I think some of my family members just give up. They don't ask, I don't tell. But I do have the opportunity to really be exposed to the public in many different forms. This podcast is one of them. So my family really listens to that and is always excited that they can understand what I do and that I was able to really follow my dream to do this.
Absolutely. And you sort of hinted at it here, but I know you've been engaged in and involved with science communication. So can you tell us a little bit about your efforts in science communication?
Yeah, I don't miss any opportunity to really bring my research outside of the lab, not on the regular avenues for science, like scientific conferences. I find most rewarding when I can see the excitement in people that had no idea what was going on. To me, that's the best reward I get. So I'm trying to be active in social media. We're trying to release educational videos of our research that we have in YouTube. And I also am an associate blogger for Small Things Considered, the blog of the American Society of Microbiology. And that's really a great way to give back to the public. It's free quality materials that actually many educators and even undergraduate students use regularly. So that's the reward for me.
Absolutely. And I know I love that Small Things Considered blog. And we've actually had Elio on the show before. So it's, it's a lot of fun to kind of check up on the articles and see what's going on there. Mm-hmm. So very, very cool. And wonderful to hear a little bit about your interest in science communication. And I think communicating to the public is really important. And especially when you're talking about inspiring other people in the public to become interested in science. So can you tell us, Gemma, are there particular people who maybe inspired you to pursue science or people who you've looked up to as role models?
There've been many people along the way, and sometimes the most unsuspected people in the most unsuspected situations, not necessarily scientists or related to my field, but I always call them like your godfather or your godmother, that every now and then, like these little angels that make a difference in your career path. Sometimes has been just people that believed in you and they gave you an opportunity when you didn't have them. So I can think about many professors all the way from high school through college and graduate work that have been instrumental to keep me motivated as well. Science is hard to pursue. So that has been hard. And I've been I'm originally from Spain, so I had to be here. And I moved to a different country, and that was hard, leaving my family behind. So I had so many people that became my family, and I cannot separate science from that personal aspect of my life. If I have to be more specific, like a particular instance, I always tell the story that when I was 6 years old, I saw a documentary about Pasteur, and that made me think about becoming a microbiologist right away. And I wrote it in my diary. I still have the diary.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that.
I look back at that, and I do have this visual of the pictures of Pasteur against a window, and he had plates, petri dishes, and the fungi that were inhibiting the growth of bacteria. To me, and the serendipity of how he found it, I was mesmerized by that, Marie. And so many times, things that our experiments that we plan in the lab are actually so similar to those visual experiments that Pasteur got. And it's just a reminder of the beauty of science, how things happen when you least expect them or when you don't plan them. And just the beauty of showing the plates with that behavior, bring it to the lab, things that probably are happening in the environment. That was it for me.
Well, Gemma, that is phenomenal. Having your career goal set at 6 years old, I think that's quite impressive.
Marie, I have to disclose, I also wanted to be a dancer, a singer, a painter, a physicist, etc. So there were many changes along the way, but that stuck.
So then tell us, what convinced you ultimately to pursue this career in microbiology? Can you tell us kind of what was that turning point where maybe you decided the dancer, the singer, those things weren't going to fly?
Well, I kind of knew that I wasn't going to have a future in show business. So I was always very aware of my limitations. But really, when you were asking me about people that influenced me, actually, I do remember my high school biology teacher was instrumental in me kind of sorting out, okay, I like all these many fields, but there is something unique about biology, and in particular microbiology, that brings the passion to a different level. And at the time in Spain, when I was in high school, I remember that the biological sciences was one of the majors with the highest level of unemployment. Everybody was saying, because I had good grades, I'll go to medical school. I actually got accepted to medical school, Marie. Uh-huh. And the week when I was supposed to pay the tuition for medical school, I actually moved to the biology building and paid for biology. And I came back home and I said, I didn't sign up for my medical school. I am going to be a biologist. And everybody said, okay. And that was it. And it was the best move I've done, because you have to follow your passion. It's otherwise too difficult a road to follow if you don't have that passion and that love for what you do.
Absolutely. And I think your story really resonates with me too, because I started college off as the pre-med major. Same story. I had good grades. People were like, oh, you should be a doctor. So I started doing that. And then just getting exposed to research, I think, changed everything for me. So did you have an opportunity to work in a lab as an undergraduate?
I did. And at the time, it was very difficult to really be an undergraduate researcher in Spain, where I did my undergrad. And literally, I was picked. Based on your grades, I would pick a few of them. And I was just lucky to be exposed to it. But I have to tell you, it wasn't a pleasant experience. I must have liked research a lot, because if that was the only criterion, I probably would have quit.
Really?
Yeah, because it wasn't a mentoring environment. And that's something that I still remember when I have undergrads in the lab. If you really want to motivate them, you have to give them a real research project with the good and the bad that comes with it. But as an undergrad, I just made media for other people. So I felt more like a technician, and I felt that there were so many opportunities that were missed. Even at that young age, I could see that there was something missing. And I've learned from my own experience, first of all, not to lose my passion. I knew there had to be something better. Mm-hmm. And to make sure that my undergrads have different experiences than my own.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you also faced some challenges when you moved from Spain then to the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, or maybe give some advice for people who might be in the same position of moving to a new country?
When I came here, the intellectual freedom and the exposure that I had to science was magnificent. I cannot really talk about any difficult part on that side. It was just so stimulating and such a liberation for me. So intellectually it was fantastic, but at the end of the day, you are still transitioning into a different culture. You are in a different country, speaking a different language. There are always so many barriers that you have to confront and overcome. But my family has always been so supportive. For me, the geographic distance has never meant emotional distance. So to me, they are my core. And then really it's just the type of friends that I made that became my family here. And throughout the years, having the opportunity to do science the way I thought I had to do science, with resources, having opportunities to learn and better yourself continuously, getting inspired by being surrounded by people that really get what science is about and what mentoring young scientists should be about. That was instrumental, and all the other personal challenges really were much easier to overcome.
Absolutely. So once you had started your PhD program, tell us, were there any other maybe key steps that really helped you get to your current position?
I think the most important one was to actually meet the man that is my husband now, because I was a graduate student when he was a postdoc next door.
I love it. It's a beautiful laboratory romance.
It's breathing to the maximum level. But I had always said that I would never date a microbiologist, Marie, I need to confess, because it's so intense when you are in science that I wanted to go out and not think about work in science. I needed a break. So that's why I thought I would never date another person in my field. And my husband was such a terrific inspiration, the way he did science, his commitment, his talent. And we really bonded. And he was like me. We would be in the lab until very late at night. And then it was really life after science. He's my soulmate at many, many different levels. But
sure,
I would say he was the most instrumental person. And his support in the most challenging moments. And he works next door to me now.
Really?
We gotta get rid of each other.
I love it. Well, so I guess the dinner table conversations about bacteria then were not so bad. You could look past them, right?
Well, I'm thinking about one dinner conversation. I asked my son, so do you want to become a scientist? And he said, hell no.
Really?
So why not? They said, you guys work too hard. I said, all right, I think we overdid it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. That's fair. So then what brought you to Michigan State University? Can you tell us about how you found this position?
So I was actually on maternity leave and my husband was applying for positions, and there was a position open at Michigan State. And we decided basically, okay, let's both apply to the same positions if we can, because as long as one of us makes it, we were very comfortable with that. And Michigan State was one of these opportunities we didn't want to miss, because if there is a place where environmental microbiology was pioneered and becomes strong, is Michigan State. And it's one university, it's a land-grant university that still remains so loyal to the true mission of giving back to society. So for me, it was very important to consider Michigan State. And although we interviewed in other places and we had to make a decision, there was something about going green that we really liked. And then I have to tell you, Marie, it was also, you know, science and scientists can be so competitive and so unloyal. And for us, there are key personal values that you have to maintain in science. And when we came here, everybody was so collegial in this department. And you never go wrong when you know that your colleagues become your friends and you have this support and such good environment. And it hasn't changed. 10 years later, it's still the same. And I'm really happy that we made the decision to come here.
Well, it sounds like you have found a wonderful environment to do your research in. So, Gemma, can you tell us a little bit about this research and a project that you have ongoing right now that you are so thrilled to be taking part in?
So we actually started focusing our work on a single type of bacteria that I was always so mesmerized by, this bacteria that respire rust. We respire oxygen kind of easy. Oxygen is a gas. It diffuses, gets into our cells, mission accomplished. But these organisms have to chew on a mineral. They literally have to breathe a mineral, iron oxides. And the idea to study how they have evolved mechanisms to achieve something so challenging. And then as I was studying the process, we started to really get the knowledge that they were doing things in the ground, producing protein nanowires like tiny power lines that were conducting electrons from the cell to the minerals. We could replace the mineral with an electrode. We could harvest electricity. So then we started thinking, my goodness, let's try to stack as many cells as possible with these power lines and see if we can make more electricity. And it worked. And all of a sudden, this idea that I mentioned before, Marie, about really bringing the research of the lab to the public to solve real problems became more and more exciting, because what we had was bioelectrodes that we were mimicking what these organisms do in the environment. So let's see who they interact with. Let's see how we can make these systems more complex and maybe industrial scale processes in which we can use electrodes to drive the degradation of waste and we can produce added value products. And these projects really expanded in many different directions, because we have projects that are already at the commercialization level to scale up these big technologies to treat industrial waste and agricultural waste. And then at the same time, we keep looking at these small protein nanowires, these little power lines that are made of protein, and we can manipulate and we can interface with electrodes. And we've become nanotechnologies as well to develop many different nanoscale devices and micro devices that can allow us to develop sensors and a range of other applications. We really go from the nano to the, I was going to say macro, but this is like super macro at the industrial scale level, and I love it.
Absolutely. I know you focus specifically on one particular bacteria. Is this something where this bacteria has characteristics that no other bacteria have, or kind of what makes this one bacteria special?
I think that the ability of these bacteria to produce these protein wires to discharge electrons, make these tiny electrical currents to reach out, is what makes them special. We are starting to learn that other bacteria have mechanisms to really discharge electrons, a way to really maximize what you can access to respire, what you can breathe. But then very few so far, and all in this group of organisms seems to have these protein nanowires. I don't think they are the only ones that invented it. I do have projects we're trying to see there has to be something else out there that found similar ways to do it. But that's the chase in science that we really enjoy. It's very unlikely that something so successful was only invented by one type of microbe. So I think there is more out there, and I can't wait to find it.
Absolutely, especially just considering the sheer number of microbes that there are out there, right? Someone must use this too.
Exactly.
Well, so cool. And I think this work has really awesome applications for renewable energy, for some of this toxic waste management. Like you talked about, that these are some huge problems that our society is facing. So you mentioned that you're sort of to the level of commercialization and getting some of this work out. Can you tell us, do you see the work all the way through, kind of from the basic bench work all the way to application, or do you partner with other groups to do that?
Well, we came to a level of scales in which we needed help. The most important thing once you want to bring certain technologies to larger scales that are applicable to industrial settings is that I'm a microbiologist and I have no industrial microbiology experience. I have no idea what their needs really are. I have no idea what a business enterprise that goes with commercialization really is. So I've been learning a lot by having the mentorship of program managers through these commercialization grants that I have from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation in Michigan State, because they really get me with the right people to mentor me. And all of a sudden, we are really starting to learn about business plans, about what we need to target to really address the needs that are important in industrial settings, which may not necessarily be the basic research that you're interested in doing. So it's been an amazing opportunity to really change the way you think about science in an applied way that I never thought I would be doing, to be honest with you.
Wonderful to hear more about this exciting project, these different lines of research that sounds like are sprouting from it as well. Mm-hmm. And we've chatted about a lot of the great things about your career, but Gemma, I know that there are downsides too to a career in science. I've been there. I've felt the challenges, the struggles, the frustrations. So Gemma, I want you to share with us today a story of your own of one of these failures or challenges and how you worked your way through it.
There've been so many that we could be here for hours and hours.
Yeah, picking your favorite is hard. I know.
I don't think I can give you a particular example because research really tests your physical and mental strength. And you get negative results almost daily until you get that positive result that cheers you up and say, okay, I'm moving to the next level. And then you are constantly exposed to criticism, the peer review system. You submit grants, you get reviews, sometimes unfair or it feels unfair. And oftentimes, really, you feel like you're swimming against the current. And sometimes you even feel like drowning. Mm-hmm. And so it's also very frustrating for me now how much harder it is to get funding for research. I don't understand why we are in a situation in which we are limited this way. And everybody seems to like and admire science, but very few realize how important it is to fund scientific endeavors and scientists. I wish we could have more money to pay our graduate students and our postdocs. I think it's unfair that we are so limited in the resources to pay them. So in the end, you really have to rely on your own passion for what you're doing and the novel idea that you're doing something that can benefit people, because you're going to invest so much of your time and energy on this that you have to know that it's worthy. So you persevere and move forward despite the many bumps, a lot of bumps that you encounter along the way. It's the way to go.
Absolutely. I think you brought up a big point for a lot of scientists out there today, this issue with trying to secure funding for the research you're excited to do. And It sounds like you've also maybe solved this problem a little bit by diversifying the kind of research you do. So maybe going after these commercialization grants. Can you tell us how that came about?
We had intellectual property that we had protected. And I think the timing was right because Michigan State was starting to realize that there really were projects that they had patents for, but needed to be breached to the level that became attractive to industry and capital investors. So they started this small program, and I think the MTRAC program for commercialization of these technologies, the first year, there were only 3 projects. The program manager I had known from before, and he knew I had several patents and technologies that could be of relevance to this program. So he actually came to my office to convince me, and I wasn't sure because it was little money. My goodness, is it going to work? This is so unknown. As a scientist, I always try to look at all the expected outcomes. Sometimes that's horrible.
Talking yourself out of it. Yeah.
And that's terrible. But then the no is always there. Let's give it a try and see what happens. And I was one of the first 3 to get funded. And at the beginning, I do remember that my project actually didn't have very high scores. It probably had the lowest scores. But then I went to present it to the oversight committee. And I realized that I was so passionate about it that I transmitted that passion. And all of a sudden, I moved up in the scores.
Oh, wow.
So, all right, so that's good. You just have to keep believing in it. And diversifying has been very exciting, but it has been really time consuming and draining because you are learning so much and you have to spend so much time in the unknown fields. But it has been a terrific opportunity, not only for me, Marie. I think as mentors, we have to give opportunities to our postdocs. I have 2 postdocs involved in this project that they were disenchanted with academia and the poor prospects that the postdocs have to go into academic positions nowadays, and how hard it is to secure funding as well. At the same time, they didn't see themselves doing industry because they didn't have the drive to maybe keep doing the same thing all the time. They like the science, the novelty of what is next, and let's build the experiments one after another. So all of a sudden, this was like an opportunity for them to start to think about industrial settings, do something different, and really get a training. Like they call it the third way, that we may be able to stimulate entrepreneurs. They are learning about business as well. And maybe my postdocs will be opening startups soon. So it's been very rewarding as a mentor as well because of that, seeing the excitement in my postdocs in something that was also unexpected to them.
Certainly. And it sounds like you are really facing this funding challenge head on and being really successful at it. So congratulations on that front. And I think this has been great for maybe giving some ideas for scientists out there who might be at this point of they're in their postdoc, they're trying to decide what to do, or giving people ideas of how to diversify their research. So very helpful. And I love talking about successes in science because I know it is a struggle to get there sometimes. So Gemma, is there another success story that you'd like to share with us today?
I think my success stories are the students that I mentored. Sometimes I feel each student comes with very different views of what's coming. And to get them to that point, Marie, where they get it, where they come to you and they had the problem and they already figured out the next experiment and what to do. That's the most rewarding aspect, I think, of research, to see them getting that in scientific maturity. And then, say, okay, I've done my job. They are ready to move on. The mentoring aspect of it, to me, is the success.
Absolutely. And I think maybe drawing from the experiences, successful or unsuccessful, that you had with previous mentors, you mentioned there were certain environments that were maybe not as great from a mentorship perspective that you encountered. And do you find that that informs how you mentor your students today?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing in life is never to forget where you come from. And it applies in all walks of life. I do have bad experiences and I look back at them as a way, this is not what I want to become. They become a reference, even it's a negative reference, because it pushes you away towards the place where you really want to be and where you should be.
Absolutely. Well, Gemma, wonderful to hear more about the successes of your students and the mentorship opportunities that you have as part of your career. And I think it's easy to get sucked into the literature of science and you're always reading papers, trying to keep up with the experiments and the studies going on in your field. But it's good to escape sometimes, disconnect, as you said, from science. And one way that I love disconnecting is being able to sit down with a great book and read. So Gemma, can you recommend a book that you've really enjoyed to me and our listeners if we're looking for an escape?
I'm an eclectic reader and I'm like a sponge. I read anything. Sometimes I just need something that is not too stimulating. I love thrillers, but every now and then I have a book. This one, I cannot really separate it completely from science. I read this book, The Psychopath Test, and it's one of those books that I will never forget because as I was reading, I said, oh my God, I know this scientist that fits perfectly into this. I think this book was talking about how we associate power with certain psychopathic behaviors, and I saw that reflected in science, and it made me think a lot about how important it is really to have certain principles, never forget where you come from, what I mentioned before, and how we idealize, even in science, personalities that become powerful or famous, but they don't really practice, I think, the type of scientific principles and mentorship. At the end of the day, we really are teachers. So that's the first thing that comes to mind just because of that. And it's associated to experiences in science as well.
Absolutely. Well, this sounds like a great book for me and the listeners to maybe build our anti-role model as we read through. I like it. Well, we will put that on our list for our listeners to find.
I'm a terrible influence, Mary. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, we need the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything represented. So, no. Well, Gemma, fantastic recommendation. And I know we've chatted a little bit during our conversation so far about some of these opportunities you had to travel. So you mentioned you started your education, training, your life in Spain. You moved to the United States. And I think travel is a part of the life of a scientist, whether you like it or not. So can you tell us about one of these really memorable travel experiences that you've had, where you were and why you were there?
I've traveled so much, and it's hard, especially when you have a young kid. And I wouldn't be able to do it if not for the support of my wonderful husband. I have to bring it up. So I have a terrific supportive partner to do that. Then, despite how tiring it can be, I really enjoy meeting new people and discussing the science live. So people ask questions, and it's so stimulating that I'm ready to answer. If I don't have an answer, I'll say it. I think the last one that I had that was very, very stimulating was the Gordon Research Conferences are great because you really get to know the people in the audience and mix. And I had one in which I was invited to give a talk at the Gordon Research Conference last January in metals in biology, and they were mostly chemists. And I have to confess that I prepared for it from the chemistry aspect so much because I knew it was going to be challenging. I couldn't wait to go there because some of my grants have been reviewed by chemists and even papers, and sometimes we speak different language, but it was such a great, stimulating idea to be there and putting the face to the project and showing the microbiology, the biology to the chemistry. And I remember I finished my talk and so many people got up and there were so many hands and we had to go and talk to them through the break. And it was just fantastic. So when you work hard, it pays off. Sometimes you get upset by critical reviews. Sometimes they come from people that look at your results from a very different angle, but it's a very valuable experience and valuable angle. It is you who has to be the one moving in that direction and trying to communicate with them. So that's the type of example of the rewards that you get when you travel and you're exposed to different scientific subfields.
Absolutely. And I think these conferences are such a great opportunity to have conversations with people who are coming in with completely different perspectives who you may not be able to encounter within your home department or university.
And I have to tell you one more thing, Marie. In this Gordon Research Conference, there was a line of people waiting to talk to me. And there was this young guy that when he was finally his turn, he said, I just want you to know that I love your post in Small Things Considered.
Really?
Yeah. I was so proud. You have no idea. I said, you know what? You just made my day. Thank you so very much.
You had a fan in the audience.
I know.
I love it. Well, Gemma, this sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And I've heard great things about these Gordon Research Conferences because they are smaller, because they are very specific to a particular field. And I think that you really get some stimulating conversations. And I've also heard that they tend to be in really interesting locations. So do you remember where this one was?
This one was in Ventura, California. So it was
not super exotic, but
no, but it was a terrific place. It's small enough. Sometimes not having the opportunity to get out too much forces you to stay in the hotel, in the small place and really get to know the people. So I thought it was a good venue for it. And there is another one that I like is the Applied and Environmental Microbiology. That one is in Mount Holyoke. And I know the area, our house when we were in Amherst was actually very close to Mount Holyoke. So, and that one is really a very nice environment for my particular field. And you get to know the students and postdocs, and they come to you, they tell you about their research, you see them at different stages in the process. You feel blessed that you have this opportunity to even be role models and provide any advice. So
absolutely. And probably fun to do a little stroll down memory lane, walk past your old house.
Yeah. Good old times.
Gemma, wonderful to hear more about your conference experiences. And we've touched on just the wonderful aspects of science in terms of being able to meet new people at these conferences and mentor students and work with people. And I think not everyone perceives science to be a very social or human endeavor, but it absolutely is. So I love to show the human side of science by just sharing some of the fun memories that scientists have had together or talking about some quirky traditions that scientists develop in different laboratories. So do you have one of these human side of science stories you can share with us today?
Well, I just had Thanksgiving celebrations with the lab and I had to stop them because I made a terrible mistake. I used to have students that have a lot of dietary restrictions. Some of them were vegetarian, some of them were vegan. I had kosher.
Gluten-free, yeah.
So I come from Spain. We don't have many dietary restrictions. But that year, I really made an effort. And I even took notes of everything, what type of combinations, everything else. And I was so proud of it. And the graduate student that was eating kosher came, and I was so proud of her. And I said, okay, I made turkey. And then I knew she had also the restrictions with dairy. I was so proud showing everything. And I opened the oven to show her the turkey, and I had wrapped it in bacon.
Oh, geez.
To this day, it's like a legacy in the lab that the older generations pass it to the new generations. Thanksgiving turkey, the Gemma wrapped with bacon, blah, blah, blah. Your lab becomes your family. So there are many good and bad situations in the lab, but we're a team. At the end of the day, Marie, we're a team. And you get this personal bond with everybody in your lab. It's good memories always.
Absolutely. And I must say, we did try a bacon wrapped turkey for Thanksgiving one year at our house, and it was amazing. So good choice.
Oh my goodness.
I do not have dietary restrictions, so I enjoyed.
It's something that many scientists talk about. We actually exchange pictures of our bacon wrapped turkeys with some colleagues.
Yeah. So do you weave them out of bacon, or do you just drape it?
I don't leave a single piece of skin not exposed to bacon. And when it is crusty, I just do a new layer.
Yeah. Well, Gemma, girl after my own heart there. I love it.
I'll send you pictures next year.
Yes, absolutely do. Well, this is a wonderful tradition. I know it can be a challenge sometimes to get everyone together, because you do have people coming from different cultures with different backgrounds, with different dietary restrictions, all that, because labs are often a very diverse place. So,
and that's the beauty of it. And I think it's also a great opportunity to show respect. And I always tell people in my lab, here there are no accents, there are no races, there are no genders. We're a team. And this is an honor system. You take the opportunity or you don't. So we're either in or out.
Absolutely. And I think creating that team mentality is so important for having a happy and successful lab. And working with your team can be a lot of fun. And one of the things that I do love doing in our own lab is just talking about these big questions that we have in our mind, some of the big questions maybe in or outside of our field that we're dying to know the answers to. And there's always something standing in the way. We talked about funding already, but feasibility, technology, staff, there's lots of different things standing in your way between you and your dream question often. So Gemma, do you have one of these dream questions that if we gave you everything, funding, staff, technology, feasibility, no barriers, what would you want to answer?
I think I would love to move into a startup company. Even without those resources, I have not given up on this idea. Also because I see how stimulating this notion of creating your own business and see your technologies really grow and make a difference is attracting a lot of interest and people in my lab as well. So that would be my dream, really, to move in that direction.
So what would you want to tackle first in your startup company? Do you have something in mind that you would want to be your sort of first project?
I do. I can't disclose it just because we are still in the process.
Gotcha.
But now that I had this opportunity with these commercialization grants to be really groomed into what the business models should be about and what directions really make sense to start, I do think there is a niche in technologies that address these ways to added value product, harnessing the microbial activities to really harvest energy from waste. So, in stimulating, promoting water reuse, that is, we're forgetting so much about water, especially in Michigan, that we have so much water. Pollution is staggering, and we just keep dumping waste and transforming our water resources. So, I'm very, very interested in that and finding really new ways to get that energy out of there and really make a difference, something sustainable.
Definitely. And I think the startup spirit is really growing, and it's exciting to see people now taking the science and translating it to these real world applications. Love to hear that. So great to hear about one of these big dreams of yours, Gemma. And I love chatting with scientists about all their big dreams. And I think as you go through your career, these dreams that you develop are shaped by the people that you work with, the people who mentor you, the people who help you along the way. And you can get some really great advice from these people to help you along your journey. So is there one piece of advice that really sticks out in your mind as the best piece you received that you can pass on to our listeners today?
When I was a graduate student, I had a professor that heard me say, I was lucky because I got some award, something like that. And she told me and said, no, Gemma, there is no such thing as luck. What you call luck is really when preparation meets opportunity. And that has been proven so true throughout my life. And I see myself quoting her to many students along the way. It is true. You just have to continue to prepare yourself, be the best you can be, and opportunities will arise, and then you take them. And the directions that your career and your life in general takes can be very different. Maybe you never thought you would go in that direction, but still worth it. You're ready.
I love it. Well, I think that is fantastic advice to pass on to our listeners. And is there any other last piece of advice that you want to share with them today, or maybe one last note of inspiration that you'd like to end our conversation on?
I don't like to give advice. It feels a little bit, I'm still making a lot of mistakes, Marie, so I don't think I'm entitled.
Other people can learn from them, though. So.
Yeah, but I'm always very transparent. The only thing that I think is very important in science is to remain open-minded at all levels. And I see many people, this goes with the psychopath test book that I told you about. Mm-hmm. You see people that started with you at the same level, students and postdocs, and you see them. There is a lot of people that become very, very narrow-minded about their research, about the outcomes. And I think once you get to that point, you lose what science really is about. And I think science surprises us. Microbes surprise us. They do whatever they want in the end. And you may spend years with a particular model. You have to remain open-minded. So when a piece of information comes that challenges that, to realize that maybe you were wrong and that something else could explain it. To me, that's what makes science an evolving field. And that's what really makes you mature as a scientist. That's the only part of a scientist that should never change.
Definitely. I think you brought up a really great point here that being open-minded, especially when you're looking at your scientific results, may allow you to see possibilities, questions, new directions that you may have otherwise been completely blind to if you came in with these preconceived notions.
Yeah, and you get that a lot in the review process of grants or papers. I remember reviewers saying, this cannot be possible. You say, okay.
Well, the data suggests otherwise, yeah.
Exactly. It's this idea that you interpret your results the best way with the knowledge that you have to just make the best possible explanation, but with the notion that you may demonstrate that you were wrong yourself or somebody else will, and that's okay. That's what is expected. And that's how science grows.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, stay open-minded out there. And Gemma, can you tell our listeners if they are looking to expand their minds and learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they go?
I've tried to be very active in Twitter, and they can really find me with just searching for my name, Gemma Reguera. If they go to the Michigan State Microbiology Department, they have all the links to my publications in PubMed and also to my website. I'm not very good at keeping it up to date, so I'm sorry.
You're not alone there.
My time is limited for certain things and my knowledge. And Twitter is something in which I just try to not only inform of our latest papers and research, but also reads that I found very interesting. And sometimes it's just the banter with colleagues in the field, and students can be part of it as well. That's always enriching, I think. So they see that we are not the serious scientists and we are not always right or with a very strict scientific method that they read in papers. So Twitter is the best, I think.
Absolutely. Listeners, we're people too, right?
Yes.
So definitely check out these resources that Gemma mentioned. And Gemma, thank you so much for joining us today on our program.
Well, thank you, Marie, for the opportunity. Really, it's been a pleasure.
Well, it was a delight to chat with you as well. And listeners, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on another episode of People Behind the Science. Your voyage to explore the lives of today's exceptional scientists has just begun. You can find everything we talked about today, including our guests' favorite books, biographies, photos, and more, when you visit us at www.peoplebehindthescience.com. I look forward to chatting with you next time on People Behind the Science.